we'll just move on to the next talk, which is by Dr. Muralidhar. How, when, and what of paralytic strabismus, the outline of management. Dr. Murali, a prolific surgeon and an outstanding, his knowledge is outstanding in especially paralytic strabismus. Dr. Murali.
Thank you for the kind words, sir. So, can you see my screen? So, I'll be talking about how, when, and what of paralytic strabismus, just aiming to give a broad overview. So, these are the characteristic features of paralytic strabismus. Most important, that deviation is maximum in the direction of base of the affected muscle. And paralytic strabismus, one important thing that we need to realize, that we need to identify is the floating saccade. Okay, this, I mean, in young children, we may not be able to do a force reduction test. So, identification of floating saccade as in the right eye in this patient can help us diagnose paralytic strabismus. And in the history, it's very important that you ask for whether it's history of monocular or binocular. And other than these, you also need to ask for history of COVID. I shall cover that in the slides to come. And in the history, you need to ask for history of, other than all this, you need to ask for history of malignancy, which is often missed, history of ocular, sinus, and neurosurgery. The strabismus evaluation is as for comitant strabismus in addition to some special tests, which I shall cover in the slides to come. For example, this patient has a right sixth nerve palsy. He has a face turn to the affected side and restriction of abduction. This is on duction testing, which is very, very important. So, restriction of abduction on duction testing, that's what we need to look at. And floating saccades I have already said. So, you see that the abduction is restricted even on duction testing. So, the restriction of movement may not be that obvious always. This patient had a vision of 6/6 and presented with a slight disturbance in vision and double vision. He had an increasing esotropia to the left, but the movement restriction per se was not very obvious. He has a left seventh nerve palsy. He had corneal hypoesthesia and bilateral disc margins blurring. So, this is the video. If you see, the movement restriction may not be very obvious. He has a small esotropia on looking to the left. The movement restriction again is not very obvious. So, that's how we diagnose sixth nerve palsy. And he has this very characteristic feature. Look at the characteristic of nystagmus in this patient. Large amplitude, but low frequency on looking to the left. Whereas on looking to the right, it changes characteristic to high frequency, low amplitude nystagmus, a very typical Bruns nystagmus. So, history, very typical Bruns nystagmus. So, this patient had a CP angle tumor, very textbook description of CP angle tumor. History is all important. This patient developed a red eye when she was traveling in a bullock cart after she sustained injury with a hook. So, this is a sharp injury, and this is what we found on table. The lateral rectus is avulsed at its insertion, and we managed to restore alignment after surgery. So, as I said, history of malignancy is very, very important. So, this patient presented with a double vision on looking to the right. He had a history of oral carcinoma and undergone radiotherapy and chemotherapy, 16 cycles. Note that this is an oroantral fistula. This was a CT scan at, before the chemotherapy. It had since healed, and he was almost 2 years in remission. And these are his findings. Note the subtle abduction restriction. There is a slight increase in esotropia on looking down, not a significant V pattern. The esotropia increases on right gaze, and for near he is ortho. That is very characteristic of sixth nerve palsy. For near, they may be ortho. And if you review the MRI, you see the broadening of cavernous sinus. There is a cavernous sinus infiltration because of a perineural invasion of the cavernous sinus. So, botulinum toxin in patients who have atherosclerotic risk factor, it could be a temporizing measure, especially if the patient has other commitments and he wants quick relief of double vision. So, I grab it with the Aruga's forceps and use a 30 gauge needle to administer botulinum toxin into the medial rectus. So, this is before and after Botox. So, in case you have passed almost 6 to 9 months without the lateral rectus recovering, then these are the key points whether the lateral rectus is working or not. If the lateral rectus is working, a recess resect procedure usually gives very good results, excellent gratifying result. If it is not working, you have to do a transposition procedure, a Hammershaimb procedure, for example. A Hammershaimb, or you have a wide variety of procedures like the Nishida or full tendon transfer. You can augment it by various modifications like Brooks. This was the patient that I had presented. The LR was not found, and LIR was spoke. This is the Hammershaimb procedure. And likewise, the superior rectus, after freeing the superior oblique, is hooked. And once that has been done, they are both transposed to the side of the lateral rectus. Yeah, so this is before and after, and this is the third nerve palsy. What we need to evaluate, what the residents need to know is that they need to check the intorsion on attempted down gaze. So that tells you that the fourth nerve is working. This is very important. And a pupil involving third nerve palsy, any third nerve palsy in a young, please advise MRI and CT angiography. This patient had a PCOM aneurysm. And management, if we again on the same lines, if MR is working, well and good, go ahead and do a recess dissect procedure. If it is not working, you have the choice. Like in this patient, it's not working. So you can do a precaruncular fixation, globe fixation, or you can do a deactivation, as in this patient, or you can do a LR to MR transposition. So I think I'll wrap up with this. So this patient had recovered from COVID a couple of months back and presented with diagnosis of, presented with double vision. If you note, there is a right inferior palsy and there is a left inferior. The patient has developed myasthenia gravis. The patient had a frozen glow, and this was, and he had lost vision on the right eye, central retinal artery occlusion, and had a pansinusitis. So I think I'll wrap here for want of time. I'll stop screen sharing, and over to you, Rohit sir and